Amazon Simple Storage Service Amazon S3. Access Management. By default, all Amazon S3 resources, such as buckets and objects, are private. Only the resource owner, an AWS account that created it, can access the resource. The resource owner can optionally grant access permissions to others by writing an access policy. Amazon S3 offers access policy options that can be broadly categorized as resource-based policies and user policies. Resource-based policies are access policies that you attach to your resources, such as buckets and objects. Bucket policies and access control lists, ACLs, are resource-based policies. You can also authenticate certain types of data access using query string authentication to grant temporary access to others with time-limited URLs. User policies are access policies that you attach to users. Access can be granted to users using AWS IAM policies. You may choose to use resource-based policies, user policies, or some combination of these to manage permissions to your Amazon S3 resources. Access control list is a legacy access control mechanism. As a general rule, AWS recommends using S3 bucket policies, or IAM policies for access control. When Amazon S3 receives a request, it must evaluate all the access policies to determine whether to authorize or deny the request. First, let's look at resource-based policies. Access control lists. Each bucket and object have an access control list, an ACL, associated with it. Access control lists use Amazon S3 specific XML schema. It defines which AWS accounts or groups are granted access and the type of access they have. When you create a bucket or an object, Amazon S3 creates a default ACL that grants the resource owner full control over the resource. You can use access control lists to grant basic read-write permissions to other AWS accounts. Bucket policy, written in JSON, is attached to a S3 bucket. It provides access permissions to the S3 bucket and all objects in it. Here is an example of a S3 bucket policy. This S3 bucket policy allows the principal, the root account and the IAM user Alice under that account to perform any S3 operation. The wildcard asterisk character after the S3 in the action statement indicates that all S3 operations are allowed. Particularly, you can perform S3 operations only on specific resources, as shown in the resource statement. In this case, only the S3 bucket with name myBucket and all objects in it are allowed. As you can see, you can use the slash and asterisk after the bucket name to indicate all objects in the bucket. User policies control who has access to your Amazon S3 resources and is written in JSON. You can use AWS Identity and Access Management, AWS IAM, to create users, groups, and roles in your account and attach access policies to grant them access to Amazon S3. Let's look at an IAM policy example. Unlike bucket policies, IAM policy does not require a principal element, because the principal is by default the entity that the IAM policy is attached to. The first part of the policy specifies bucket level permissions. It allows the list bucket action so that applications can list all objects in the test bucket. The second part specifies object level permissions. It allows put object, get object, and delete object actions so that applications can write, read, and delete any objects in the test bucket.